Millionaire shocked to see his ex as doctor during checkup, then notices a girl who looks like him. A very beautiful story for my loyal, greatest and best family. Let's begin with love. Before we start, I just want one thing from you: like this video, subscribe to the channel and type present in the comments to appreciate your brother work. Love dies twice. First when trust shatters, and again when the door closes for the final time. Dr. Benta Lavender's hands trembled as she pushed open the front door of the home she'd shared with her husband for 3 years. The ultrasound image in her coat pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric, warming her heart even as October rain chilled her skin. She'd left the hospital early, cutting her rounds short for the first time since starting her residency in cardiology. This news couldn't wait. The house sat dark except for a single lamp in the living room. Strange. John usually lit up every room when he was home, said it made the place feel less empty when she worked late shifts. Her smile faded as she heard voices, his and another she knew too well. "You have to do this tonight, Johnny. Tonight, before she manipulates you further." Judith Cooper, John's mother. The woman who'd made Benta's life a careful balancing act between love and tolerance. Benta's wet shoes squeaked on the hardwood as she entered the living room. John sat on the couch, his face buried in his hands. Judith stood behind him like a sentinel, her expression twisted into something that might have been concern on anyone else but looked like victory on her. "John." Benta's voice came out smaller than she intended. "What's happening?" He looked up and Benta's world tilted. Those eyes, the warm brown eyes that had promised her forever on their wedding day, looked at her like she was a stranger. Worse, like she was something rotten he'd discovered in his home. "Don't play innocent." His voice was flat, dead. "I know everything." "Know what?" Benta moved toward him, but Judith stepped between them. "Don't touch him. You've done enough damage." "Judith, what are you—" "Mom, please." John stood and Benta noticed the papers on the coffee table. Legal documents. Her heart began to race, that medical training kicking in even as her personal world crumbled. Elevated pulse, shallow breathing, fight or flight response activating. "John, talk to me. Whatever this is." "I saw the photos, Benta." He picked up a manila envelope from the side table, threw it at her feet. Pictures spilled out. Her outside the hospital. Her at a coffee shop. Her standing close to Dr. Raymond Wells, her attending physician and mentor. Normal, innocent moments twisted by angles and timing to look like something else entirely. "That's Raymond, my supervisor. John, these are nothing." His laugh was bitter, broken. "You're having an affair with him. My mother hired someone, got proof. Don't stand there and lie to my face." Benta's mind reeled. She picked up one photo, her and Raymond outside the hospital cafeteria. She remembered that day. He'd told her she was doing excellent work, that her dedication to patients reminded him why he became a doctor. A 30-second conversation, frozen in a photograph and poisoned with false meaning. This is insane. Raymond is married with 4 children. "He's my mentor. Nothing more." "The investigator followed you for weeks." Judith's voice dripped with false sympathy. "Meeting him at odd hours. Secret conversations. Late-night hospital emergencies that lasted hours. I'm a resident. I work insane hours. Those weren't secret meetings. They were my job." "Benta," John's voice cracked. "Stop lying. Just stop. I want you gone." The world stopped spinning. Gone. That word hung in the air, like smoke from a fire consuming everything she'd built. "You can't be serious. I had the divorce. Papers drawn up this afternoon." He gestured to the coffee table. "Sign them. Leave tonight. I'll give you money, enough to start over somewhere else. But I want you out of this house, out of my life." Benta's knees nearly gave out. The ultrasound in her pocket felt impossibly heavy. She was carrying his child, their child, the baby they'd tried for, hoped for, dreamed about during whispered late-night conversations when her shifts finally ended and he was still awake, waiting for her. "John, please listen to me." "I can't even look at you anymore." His words were knives, each one finding a vital organ. "Every time I close my eyes, I see you with him, laughing, touching, making a fool of me. That never happened. The evidence doesn't lie. Your mother does. The words exploded from Benta before she could stop them. She whirled on Judith, who stood with her arms crossed, barely suppressing a smile. You've hated me from the beginning. From the moment John brought home a black woman and said he was in love. You've been waiting for a chance like this. How dare you? It's true, and you know it. Benta's voice rose, years of swallowed insults and subtle racism finally breaking free. Every backhanded compliment, every suggestion that John could do better, every reminder that I'm not what you envisioned for your son. You fabricated this entire thing. Get out of my house. John's voice cut through the chaos, cold and final. I don't care what excuses you make. I don't care about your accusations. You destroyed us, not my mother. Sign the papers, or I'll have you forcibly removed. Benta looked at the man she'd loved since medical school. The man who'd proposed to her during her first grueling week of residency, showing up at the hospital with flowers and a ring, saying he couldn't wait another day to make her his wife. That man was gone. The stranger standing before her had already made his choice. Her hand moved to her pocket, fingers brushing the ultrasound image. Tell him about the baby. Tell him he's going to be a father. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the disgust in his eyes. Maybe it was Judith's triumphant expression. Maybe it was the realization that if he could believe this lie, if he could choose his mother's poison over his wife's truth, he didn't deserve to know. This baby deserved better than a father who would throw away family based on manufactured evidence and suspicion. Fine. Her voice came out steady, stronger than she felt. Give me the papers. She sat down, picked up the pen with hands that had sutured wounds and restarted hearts, and signed away her marriage. Each signature felt like a betrayal of everything they'd promised each other. But what choice did she have? He'd already left her. This was just paperwork. I'll be gone by morning. She stood, dropping the pen on the table. But John, he wouldn't look at her. When you realize the truth, and you will realize it someday, don't come looking for me. Some broken things can't be fixed. She walked toward the stairs, toward the bedroom they'd shared, toward the life she needed to pack up and leave behind. But John's voice stopped her. Benta. She turned, hope flickering despite everything. Maybe he'd seen through his mother's lies. Maybe. Leave your key on the counter. That hope died. She went upstairs, threw clothes into a suitcase with shaking hands. Crying would come later. Right now, she needed to survive. She needed to protect the tiny life growing inside her that John would never know existed. Hours later, after Judith had finally left, after the house fell silent, Benta came back downstairs. She'd packed her essentials, left behind everything else. Pictures, wedding gifts, the life they'd built, all of it felt poisoned now. John sat on the couch, a bottle of whiskey on the table beside him. He looked up as she descended the stairs, and something flickered in his eyes. Regret, pain, anger, she couldn't tell anymore. This is really it? He asked, words slurred at the edges. You're really leaving? Wuti, you're really making me go. They stared at each other across the space that used to feel like home. All the love they'd shared, all the promises and dreams and whispered forevers, reduced to this moment of strangers saying goodbye. I hate you. His words were meant to wound, and they succeeded. I hate what you did to us. I hate you too. The lie came easily. I hate that you were too weak to trust me, too blind to see the truth. Something shifted in the air between them, anger transforming into something else, something raw and primal and devastating. He crossed the room, grabbed her wrist, not violently but desperately. She should have pulled away, should have slapped him and walked out with her dignity intact. Instead, she kissed him. It wasn't gentle or loving. It was fury and heartbreak and goodbye all tangled together. His hands were rough, hers were rougher. They crashed into walls, knocked over furniture, tore at clothes with the same hands that used to touch with tenderness. This wasn't making love. This was war, fought on familiar territory with weapons they'd sworn never to use against each other. Afterward, they lay on the floor of the living room, not touching, breathing hard. The silence was worse than the fighting. Leave, His voice was empty now. "Please just leave." Benta stood, gathered her scattered clothes, dressed with as much dignity as she could salvage. She picked up her suitcase at the door, placed her key on the counter with a click that sounded like a cell door closing. She walked out into the rain, climbed into her car, and drove away from the only home she'd known since leaving her family behind to be with him. At a red light, 3 blocks away, she pulled out the ultrasound image. A tiny flutter of cells that would become a person. A daughter, she somehow knew. A little girl who would never know her father because he'd chosen hatred over trust, lies over love. Benta pressed the image to her chest and whispered to the child he'd never meet, "Your father chose his mother's lies over our truth. He'll never know you existed, and that's his loss, not ours." The light turned green. She drove forward into an uncertain future, leaving John Cooper behind in the darkness where he belonged. What neither of them knew, what neither could have guessed in that moment of absolute ending, was that their story wasn't over. It was only beginning. Chapter 2. Parallel Lives. The emergency room buzzed with Friday night chaos when Carnation Cooper Lavender first drew breath. Benta had delivered alone, her only companion a kind nurse named Patricia, who held her hand through contractions that felt like her body was being torn apart. No family in the waiting room, no proud father pacing nervously, just Benta and her determination to survive this too. "She's beautiful," Patricia whispered, placing the tiny bundle against Benta's chest. "Look at those eyes. Copper brown eyes, exactly like her father's, stared up at Benta with unfocused wonder. The baby had his chin too, his nose, his thick black hair. Carnation was John Cooper written in infant form, and Benta's heart broke and mended simultaneously. "Hello, my flower," Benta whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It's just you and me now. But I promise you, that's going to be enough." 8 years carved their marks on both mother and daughter. Benta rose from exhausted resident to respected cardiologist, specializing in interventional procedures that other doctors called impossible. Her colleagues knew her as Dr. Lavender, brilliant, cold, unreachable. Her patients knew her as the doctor who actually listened, who saw them as people rather than cases. The contradiction suited her fine. Walls kept the world at a safe distance. Carnation grew like a wildflower, beautiful and resilient. She inherited her mother's stubborn streak and her father's analytical mind, a dangerous combination that led to questions Benta wasn't always ready to answer. "Why don't I look like you, Mama?" Carnation asked one morning, studying their reflections in the bathroom mirror. She was 6 then, old enough to notice that her lighter skin and copper eyes didn't match Benta's rich, dark complexion and near black eyes. Benta had prepared for this question, rehearsed the answer during sleepless nights. "You look like someone I once loved very much, someone who couldn't stay. Did he die?" "In a way, yes. The man I loved died, and someone else took his place." Carnation accepted this with the simple trust of childhood, but Benta saw the wheels turning in that clever mind, storing questions for later. Their apartment was small but warm, 2 bedrooms in a building where neighbors became family. Mrs. Okoye downstairs watched Carnation when Benta pulled emergency shifts. The college student next door, Nathan, helped with homework in exchange for Benta's home-cooked meals. They built a life from fragments, and it was good. Not perfect, but good. Benta kept her maiden name for Carnation's birth certificate, used her mother's address in another state for registration, left no trail that could lead John Cooper back to them. She'd buried herself so thoroughly that finding them would require resources and determination she doubted he possessed. She was wrong about the resources. Across the city, in a penthouse that felt more like a mausoleum than a home, John Cooper stared at his reflection and barely recognized himself. Wealth had come easily after the divorce. Investments that multiplied, opportunities that materialized, success that meant nothing without someone to share it with. His bank account grew while his soul shrank. He hadn't remarried, hadn't even seriously dated. Every woman he met felt like a poor copy of the one he'd destroyed. His mother had lived another 2 years after the divorce, years he'd spent trying to be the good son she'd always demanded. But something had broken between them that night. He'd seen her smile as Benta signed those papers, a satisfaction that seemed excessive even for a protective mother. The seed of doubt planted itself deep. When Judith Cooper died of a stroke, John found himself at her bedside in the hospital. She'd already been gone for minutes when he arrived. But the nurses told him she'd been agitated at the end, trying to say something important. Going through her papers afterward, settling her affairs, he found the file. Hidden in her home office, tucked behind photo albums, the investigator's real report. Not the fabricated evidence she'd shown him, but the truth. No evidence of infidelial activity. Dr. Lavender maintains strictly professional relationships with all colleagues, including Dr. Raymond Wells. Subject appears devoted to husband, despite mother-in-law's assertions. Recommend closing investigation as no wrongdoing found. Below that, a receipt. Payment for a second photographer, one who specialized in creative documentation for legal purposes. A nice way of saying he staged photos for money. John's hands shook so violently the papers scattered across his mother's desk. She'd paid someone to fake evidence. She'd manufactured the entire affair from whole cloth. She'd destroyed his marriage with lies, and he'd been too blind, too eager to believe the worst, to question her. The following months blurred together. Private investigators searched for Benta but found nothing. She'd disappeared completely, changed her information, left no digital footprint. John stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping through the night. His friends grew concerned. His business partners suggested therapy. He couldn't tell them the truth, that he'd destroyed the only real thing in his life because he'd been too weak to trust his own wife over his mother's poison. He kept Benta's wedding ring in his pocket, a constant reminder of his failure. Sometimes he took it out during meetings, turned it over in his fingers, wondered if she ever thought about him. Probably not. Probably she'd moved on, found someone worthy of her, built the life he'd denied her. The thought of Benta with another man made him physically ill, but he had no right to those feelings. He'd given up that right when he handed her divorce papers and watched her walk away into the rain. What John didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Benta thought about him every single day, not with longing, but with anger that had calcified into something harder over time. Every time Carnation asked about her father, every time those copper eyes looked up at her with John's expressions, Benta remembered. And remembering kept her strong, kept her walls high, kept her from ever being vulnerable again. "Mama, can I ask you something?" Carnation was 7 now, sitting at their kitchen table doing homework while Benta prepared dinner. "Always, Flower. Why do I have 2 last names?" Benta paused mid-chop. "Cooper Lavender, one from each of your parents. But you only use Lavender now. I changed mine back after the divorce." "What's divorce?" There it was. The question Benta had dreaded and anticipated in equal measure. She sat down across from her daughter, wiping her hands on a towel. "It's when 2 people who were married decide they can't be married anymore. They stop being a family. Did my father want to stop being a family with us?" "He didn't know about you, baby." "I left before I could tell him." "Why?" "How do you explain betrayal to a child? How do you describe the moment when love turns to ash in your mouth?" "Because sometimes people show you who they really are and you have to believe them. Your father chose to believe lies about me instead of trusting me. That told me everything I needed to know about who he was." Carnation processed this with her usual seriousness. "What if he changed?" "People don't change that much, Carnation. But caterpillars become butterflies. You told me that's called metamorphosis." Benta couldn't help but smile, despite the ache in her chest. "You're too smart for your own good. I got it from somewhere." Carnation grinned, then grew serious again. "Do you think he ever wonders about you?" "Well, every day," Benta thought. "If there's any justice in the world, he wonders every single day what he threw away." "I don't know, Flower. And honestly, I don't care anymore. We have each other, and that's what matters." It was a lie, but a necessary one. Benta cared. She cared enough that it still hurt, which made her angrier at herself than at John. She should have moved past this by now. should have built a new life where he was just a footnote, a mistake from her past. Instead, he haunted every corner of her present. That night, after Carnation fell asleep, Benta stood in her bedroom and pulled out the box she kept hidden in her closet. Inside, the ultrasound from that awful night, her wedding ring, a single photo of her and John from their honeymoon. She'd kept them not out of sentiment but as evidence, proof that she'd once been foolish enough to believe in forever. She studied John's face in the photograph. He looked young, happy, unburdened. The man who'd thrown her out of their home was a different person, twisted by his mother's manipulation and his own weakness. "I hope you're miserable," she whispered to the photo. "I hope you wake up every day and remember what you did. I hope it eats you alive." But even as she said it, part of her wondered if he even thought about her anymore. Maybe he'd moved on easily, found someone else, built a new family with a woman his mother would have approved of. Maybe their marriage meant so little that forgetting her had been simple. That thought hurt worse than the betrayal itself. Benta put the box away, climbed into bed, and stared at the ceiling until sleep finally claimed her. In her dreams, she was back in that living room, signing divorce papers while her heart shattered. But this time, when she stood to leave, she turned back and told him about the baby. In her dreams, he believed her, begged her to stay, chose her over his mother. She always woke up angry at herself for even dreaming of that possibility. Across the city, John lay awake in his empty penthouse, staring at Benta's wedding ring in his palm. He'd worn a groove in the gold from constant handling, a physical reminder of his failure. Tomorrow, he had an appointment at Memorial Hospital for the chest pains that had been plaguing him for months. Stress-related, probably. Karma, definitely. His doctor had referred him to a cardiologist for a full workup, someone supposedly brilliant with complex cases. He didn't know the doctor's name. Didn't care. Nothing mattered anymore except the hope that maybe, somehow, someday, he'd find Benta and have the chance to beg for her forgiveness. What he didn't know was that tomorrow would bring him face to face with everything he'd lost, and standing beside her would be the daughter he never knew existed. A little girl, with his eyes and his mother's name on her birth certificate, a daily reminder to Benta of the man who chose wrong. "Please," John whispered to the darkness, to God, to whoever might be listening. "Let me find her. Let me make this right." But some prayers go unanswered. Some mistakes can't be fixed with words. And some reunions, when they finally come, bring more pain than healing. John would learn all of this the next day, when he walked into Dr. Lavender's office and saw the ghost of his past standing in the present, more beautiful and unreachable than ever. Chapter 3. The Collision. Memorial Hospital smelled like antiseptic and false hope. John sat in the cardiology waiting room, his knee bouncing with nervous energy that had nothing to do with his medical condition. The chest pains had become frequent enough that his primary physician insisted on this specialist consultation. John suspected stress was crushing him from the inside out, fitting, since guilt had been doing the same thing for 8 years. "Mr. Cooper?" A nurse appeared with a clipboard. "Dr. Lavender will see you now." John followed her down a hallway lined with paintings of hearts, anatomical, abstract, symbolic. They stopped at a door with a nameplate that read, "Dr. B. Lavender, Interventional Cardiology." Something about that initial nagged at his brain, but he couldn't place why. "Just through here. The doctor will be with you in a moment." The office was sparse but personal. Medical journals stacked neatly on a desk, a few framed certifications on the wall, and a child's drawing taped beside the computer monitor. A stick-figure woman in a white coat holding hands with a smaller stick figure, both smiling under a purple sun. The smaller figure had written, "My mama is a hero," in careful letters across the top. John smiled despite himself. Dr. Lavender was apparently a mother. He wondered if she was married, if she had the family life that should have been his and Benta's. The door opened behind him. "Mr. Cooper, I apologize for the wait. I was just finishing with another patient." John turned around, and the world stopped spinning. Benta. She stood frozen in the doorway, a patient file clutched in her hands. 8 years had transformed her from beautiful to devastating. Her hair was shorter now, cut in a professional style that framed her face. She wore minimal makeup but didn't need it. She'd always had that effortless elegance that made other women jealous. The white coat sat perfectly on her shoulders, a stethoscope draped around her neck like jewelry, but it was her eyes that destroyed him. Those deep, dark eyes that used to look at him with love, now stared at him with something far worse than hatred, recognition, memory, and absolute, Arctic coldness. Benta. Her name fell from his lips like a prayer, like a confession, like an apology that could never be enough. It's Dr. Lavender. Her voice could have frozen water. She stepped into the office, closed the door with careful precision, and moved behind her desk like she was putting a barricade between them. Mr. Cooper, you're here regarding persistent chest pain, correct? I can't believe, after all this time, your symptoms, Mr. Cooper. She clicked her pen, opened his file, became the picture of professional detachment. Please describe them in detail. Benta, we need to talk. We need to do nothing except address your medical condition. She looked up, and he flinched at the ice in her gaze. I'm your physician today. Either you tell me about your chest pain, or I'll refer you to one of my colleagues. Choose quickly. I have other patients waiting. John sank into the patient chair, his mind reeling. Benta was a cardiologist, Dr. B. Lavender. She'd finished her training, built a career, become the doctor she'd always dreamed of being. Without him, despite him, because of him. The pain started about 6 months ago, he managed, his voice hoarse. Sharp pressure, usually when I'm stressed. Sometimes it radiates down my left arm. The door burst open. Mama, I finished all my homework and Mrs. Chen says I can have cookies if you say it's okay. And, oh. A little girl stood in the doorway, backpack hanging off one shoulder, braids bouncing with sudden stillness. She stared at John with eyes that punched the breath from his lungs. Copper-brown eyes, his eyes, looking at him from a face that was Benta's bone structure softened by youth, his coloring lightened by her melanin, a perfect combination of both of them that screamed the truth louder than words ever could. Carnation! Benta's voice cracked for the first time since he'd entered. I told you to wait in the staff lounge. I know, but I got bored and the girl, Carnation, stared at John with open curiosity. Who's that? Time crystallized into that single moment. John couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except stare at this child who had his chin and his nose and his expressions. She was maybe 7 or 8, which meant that last night. That horrible, angry, passionate last night before Benta left. Carnation, go back to Mrs. Chen right now. Benta stood, her professional mask cracking at the edges. We'll talk about this later. But Mama... Now, Carnation. The girl's face fell, but she nodded and backed out of the office, casting one more curious glance at John before closing the door. The silence she left behind was suffocating. John's hands shook so badly he had to grip the arms of the chair to keep them still. How old is she? That's none of your concern. Benta, Dr. Lavender, how old is she? Benta sat back down with rigid precision, her face a mask of ice over volcanic fury. Your medical history indicates no previous cardiac events. Are there any family history factors I should be aware of? So answer my question. This is a professional medical consultation, Mr. Cooper. Either we continue with that, or you leave my office. John leaned forward, searching her face for any crack in the armor. That little girl has my eyes, my face. She's mine, isn't she? She's ours. The pen in Benta's hand snapped. Ink bled across the file like a wound opening. She stared at it for a long moment, then raised her eyes to meet his. The rage there could have melted steel. You have some nerve. Her voice was quiet, deadly. You throw me out of our home, accuse me of adultery, destroy our marriage with your mother's lies, and now you think you can walk into my office and claim my daughter. No, our daughter. My daughter. Benta slammed her hand on the desk and John flinched. You gave up any rights to her the night you handed me divorce papers and looked at me like I was garbage. You don't get to see her for 5 minutes and suddenly decide you're a father. I didn't know you were pregnant, because you didn't want to know. You wanted me gone, remember? Out of your house, out of your life. Well, congratulations, John. You succeeded. And I built a beautiful life without you. Benta, please, stop saying my name like you have the right to it. She stood, began pacing behind her desk like a caged predator. You know what the worst part is? I was going to tell you that night. I came home early from the hospital, had the ultrasound in my pocket, was ready to surprise you with the news that we were finally going to be parents. And instead, I found you with your mother and those fake photographs, ready to throw me away like I meant nothing. I know. You know nothing." Her laugh was sharp, broken. "You have no idea what it was like. Being pregnant and alone, working residency shifts while growing a human, delivering her by myself because you decided I was a liar and a cheat, raising her every single day while you, what? Got rich, found someone new? Forgot I existed." "I never forgot," John's voice cracked. "Not for one day, not for 1 hour." "Oh, how noble!" Sarcasm dripped from every word. "You remembered the wife you destroyed. Should I be grateful? My mother confessed before she died. The investigation was fake, the photos were staged. I've been searching for you ever since, trying to find you, trying to apologize. Apologize?" Benta moved around the desk now, stopped a few feet from him. Close enough that he could see the flecks of amber in her dark eyes, close enough to remember how she used to look at him before he ruined everything. "You think an apology fixes 8 years? 8 years of our daughter growing up without a father? 8 years of me doing everything alone? I'm sorry." The words felt pathetic, inadequate. "Benta, I'm so sorry. I was wrong, I was stupid, You were exactly what your mother raised you to be, weak, easily manipulated, quick to believe the worst." She crossed her arms. "And you know what? I'm glad, because Carnation deserved better than a father who would throw his family away on circumstantial evidence. Let me meet her, please. Let me know my daughter." "No." The word was final, absolute. "You're not her father, John. You're a stranger who happens to share her DNA. I'm her parent. I've been both parents since before she was born. You don't get to walk into our lives and pretend you have rights here. I have legal rights. Try it." Her smile was dangerous. "Take me to court. Explain to a judge how you divorced your pregnant wife, never bothered to check if she might be carrying your child, and then vanished for 8 years. I have documentation, medical records, proof that I tried to reach out after she was born, and you changed your number. Let's see how that plays out for you." It was a lie. She'd never tried to reach him, but John didn't know that. The bluff worked. He sagged back in his chair, defeated. "I've spent 8 years looking for you," he said quietly. 8 years trying to make this right. Some things can't be made right. They're just broken forever." Benta moved back behind her desk, the professional mask sliding back into place. "Now, Mr. Cooper, I'm referring you to Dr. Phillips down the hall for your cardiac consultation. I can't treat you in good conscience given our personal history." "Benta, this consultation is over." She picked up her phone, dialed an extension. "Yes, this is Dr. Lavender. I need a patient transfer to Dr. Phillips, stat. Personal conflict of interest." She hung up. "Someone will escort you out." John stood on shaking legs. This couldn't be it. He'd found her, found their daughter, and she was sending him away like he was nothing. Like he meant nothing. "I'm not giving up." The words came from somewhere deep, some place that refused to accept defeat. "I lost you once because I was blind. I'm not losing you again. You already lost us, John. 8 years ago. You just didn't know it until now." The door opened. A nurse appeared to escort him out. John moved toward the exit but turned back one last time. Benta stood framed by the window, sunlight making her seem almost ethereal, untouchable. "I loved you," he said. "I never stopped. Love isn't enough when trust is gone." She turned away from him, dismissing him as completely as he'd once dismissed her. "Goodbye, Mr. Cooper. I hope Dr. Phillips can help with your heart condition. But I'm not a miracle worker. Some broken hearts can't be healed." The door closed between them with a soft click that sounded like a cell door locking. John stood in the hallway, his mind spinning. He had a daughter, Carnation. She was beautiful and bright and everything he'd ever wanted. And she had no idea who he was. Somewhere in this building, his little girl was doing homework, eating cookies, living a life that didn't include him, had never included him, might never include him, but he'd seen her, looked into eyes that were mirror images of his own. That changed everything. He couldn't walk away now, even if Benta wanted him to. Even if he deserved to be shut out of their lives forever. He found his way back to the waiting room, sank into a chair, and tried to process the earthquake that had just destroyed and rebuilt his world simultaneously. A child. He had a child. A daughter who looked at him like he was a stranger because that's exactly what he was. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stay away from us. I mean it. Don't make me get a restraining order. John stared at the message, then at the door that led back to the cardiology wing. Behind it somewhere was Benta and Carnation, his former wife and the daughter he'd never met. His family, or what should have been his family if he hadn't been too stupid and broken to deserve them. He typed back, "I can't. I'm sorry. I can't walk away this time." The reply came seconds later, "Then you'll regret it. I promise you that. I've learned how to fight, John, and I'll fight you with everything I have to protect her from disappointment." John closed his eyes, letting the reality sink in. Benta hated him. She had every right to, but she'd also given him the greatest gift he'd never known he had, a daughter. And that daughter had his eyes, which meant part of him lived in her, whether Benta wanted it to or not. He stood up, walked to the hospital exit, and stepped out into autumn sunshine that felt too bright for the darkness churning in his chest. Somewhere behind him, in a doctor's office decorated with a child's drawing, Benta Lavender stood with her hand pressed to her mouth, tears finally streaming down her face. Seeing John again had ripped open every wound she'd thought had scarred over, and watching him see Carnation, watching the realization hit him, had been both satisfying and devastating. He knew now. The secret she'd carried for 8 years was out, and she had no idea what came next, except that it would be painful. Everything with John had always been painful. "Mama." Carnation's voice at the door made Benta wipe her eyes quickly. "Yes, Flower?" "Daisies." "That man." Why did he stare at me like that? Benta knelt down, pulled her daughter into a tight hug, breathed in the scent of her shampoo and innocence. "Some people see ghosts in other people's faces. What does that mean?" "It means you remind him of someone he used to know." "Oh!" Carnation pulled back, studied her mother's face with those two knowing eyes. "Were you crying?" "No, baby, just tired. It was a long day. Can we get pizza for dinner?" "Anything you want." As Carnation ran ahead toward the exit, Benta followed slowly, her mind already spinning with contingency plans. Restraining orders, custody lawyers, protective measures. She'd built a fortress around them for 8 years. She wouldn't let John Cooper tear down those walls just because he'd suddenly developed a conscience. But deep down, in a place she refused to acknowledge, a traitorous part of her wondered, what if he had changed? What if his remorse was real? Then she remembered his face when he'd accused her of adultery, his voice when he'd told her to leave, his choice to believe lies over love. No, people didn't change that fundamentally, and even if they did, it was too late. The damage was permanent. John Cooper could spend the rest of his life regretting what he'd done. That was the only justice Benta needed. Chapter 4. The Reckoning Begins. John sat in his car across from Memorial Hospital for 3 hours, watching the staff entrance like a man possessed. Every rational thought had evaporated the moment he'd looked into his daughter's eyes. Carnation. Even her name was beautiful, unusual and perfect. He did the math. 8 years ago. That last night. He vomited in the bushes. When Benta finally emerged, with Carnation's small hand clasped in hers, John felt something crack open inside him. They walked to an older sedan, climbed in, and drove through progressively less affluent neighborhoods. He followed at a distance, careful but desperate. They pulled into an apartment complex that had seen better decades. Through a window, John could see shadows moving, Benta and Carnation going about their evening routine. His daughter was growing up in modest circumstances, while he'd been living in a penthouse that felt like a tomb. Guilt crashed over him in waves. If he'd just trusted Benta, if he'd just questioned his mother's evidence, if he'd been less of a coward, they could have had everything. He spent the night in his car, watching their apartment like a guardian angel who'd arrived too late. When morning came, he watched Carnation emerge in a school uniform, backpack bouncing, as she skipped alongside Benta. She was so animated, so full of life. His daughter was growing up happy despite his absence, which should have been comforting, but somehow made everything worse. The next day, John returned to the hospital and intercepted Benta before she reached her car. "We need to talk." Benta spun around, recognition turning to fury in seconds. "Are you following me? Please, just 5 minutes." "No." She pulled out her phone. "I told you to stay away. I will call the police right now if you don't leave. I just want to understand. Please, Benta, help me understand how this happened." "How it happened?" Her laugh was bitter. "You want a biology lesson? When two people who hate each other have one last hate-filled encounter, sometimes consequences occur. Is that clear enough?" "I mean, why didn't you tell me?" Tell you. She stepped closer, jabbing a finger at his chest. Tell the man who just called me a lying cheat? Tell the husband who threw me out at his mother's demand? Tell the person who looked at me with such disgust that I wanted to die? Why exactly should I have told you anything? Oh, because it was my child too. No, the word cracked like a whip. She was a cluster of cells when you ended us. She became a child when I went through hell alone to bring her into this world. You didn't earn anything except the right to be forgotten. I would have stayed if I'd known, stayed out of obligation. Benta's eyes blazed. Stayed while resenting us both? No, thank you. Carnation deserved better than a father who stayed out of guilt. My mother confessed before she died. She paid someone to stage those photos. There was never any affair. I've been searching for you ever since. Oh, how noble, she clapped mockingly. You figured out you destroyed an innocent woman and thought an apology would fix it. I rebuilt my entire life from nothing, John, nothing. I was pregnant, divorced, and alone. Do you know how many apartments wouldn't rent to me because I was a single mother? How many people assumed I was some tragic statistic? Dead. Tears streamed down her face now, years of suppressed pain finally erupting. Do you know what the worst part was? Her voice cracked. I loved you so much that even after everything, I still hoped you'd realize your mistake. I was pathetic enough to hope for that for months, while my belly grew with your child. I tried to find you. Not hard enough. If you'd really wanted to find me, you would have. And you know why I succeeded? Because you didn't actually try that hard. Because some part of you was relieved I was gone. The accusation hit home because it was partially true. Only later, when the truth emerged, had genuine regret set in. You're right, he admitted quietly. I didn't try hard enough at first. But after my mother confessed, I spent every resource I had trying to find you. I didn't want to be found. Benta wiped her face roughly. Better to let her think you were just gone than to risk you disappointing her the way you disappointed me. Let me prove I've changed. No. She pulled her car keys from her pocket. She's happy, well-adjusted, loved. I won't let you disrupt that because you need to assuage your conscience. She got in her car and drove away, leaving John standing in the parking lot with the weight of 8 years crushing down on him. His phone buzzed. An email from the private investigator he'd hired years ago. The subject line read, "You might want to see this." Inside was a link to Carnation's school website, a class photo. His daughter smiling at the camera, missing a front tooth, eyes full of joy. Below the link, a message. Found this while doing unrelated research. Thought you'd want to know. Hawthorne Elementary. John stared at the photo. He knew where she went to school. He shouldn't use that information. Shouldn't go anywhere near her school. But instead, he saved the email and put Hawthorne Elementary's address into his GPS. Some mistakes compound themselves. Some bad decisions lead to worse ones. And sometimes, a man who's already lost everything convinces himself he has nothing left to lose. Chapter 5. The Siege. Carnation noticed the crying man first. She was 7 years old and observant. The man appeared outside her school for 3 days, standing across the street beneath the oak tree, watching but never approaching. She had a nice face when he wasn't crying. "Mama, there's a man who watches us," she mentioned casually while they walked to the car after school. Benta's entire body went rigid. "What man, Flower? The one under the tree. See? He's there again." Benta turned, and even from across the street, John felt her fury like a physical blow. She grabbed Carnation's hand and dragged her to their car. "Stay away from us," she shouted, loud enough that other parents turned to stare. "I will call the police." John just stood there, soaking in every second he could see his daughter. Carnation peered at him through the car window, her face pressed to the glass with curiosity. He lifted his hand in a small wave. She waved back before Benta noticed and pulled her away from the window. That night, John's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "If you show up at her school again, I'm getting a restraining order. This is your only warning." He should have listened. Instead, he showed up the next day, and the day after that. He'd sit in his car down the street, watching their windows light up as evening fell. Sometimes he'd see Carnation's silhouette as she moved past the curtains. Once he saw her dancing to music he couldn't hear, spinning in circles with her arms out like a bird. His daughter loved to dance. He stored that information away like treasure. On the 5th day, Benta came out alone after Carnation was presumably in bed. She marched straight to his car and pounded on the window until he rolled it down. "This ends now." She threw a manila envelope through the window. "Restraining order. If you come within 500 feet of me, Carnation, her school or our home, you'll be arrested. Do you understand? Benta, do you understand?" He picked up the envelope. "Official legal documents. Temporary restraining order pending a hearing. I just want to see her." "You don't have that right." Benta's voice shook with exhaustion. "You show up everywhere like some kind of ghost. Carnation asked me tonight if you were dangerous. My 7-year-old daughter is worried about the strange man stalking us." Guilt stabbed through him. "I didn't mean to scare her, but you did, because you're thinking about yourself, not about her. What happens when the novelty wears off, John? When being a father's hard? Will you stick around then, or will you bail?" She was right. He knew she was right. "She waved at me," he said desperately. "I did. At the school, when you were pulling away. She waved at me." Benta's face crumpled for just a second. "Did I say do? So children wave at strangers. It doesn't mean anything. She has my eyes, Benta. She's mine. She's mine." Benta's control shattered. "I carried her. I birthed her. I raised her. You're just DNA, John. Being there makes you a father. And you weren't there. Because I didn't know. Because you didn't want to know." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "You looked at me like I was nothing. Like 3 years of marriage meant nothing. I walked away and promised myself my baby would never know what it felt like to be unwanted. I would have wanted her. You didn't want me. Why would you want a child you thought was conceived through adultery?" She wiped her face roughly. "I saved us from that hell, John. I saved Carnation from growing up in a house filled with suspicion and resentment." She turned and walked away, and this time John didn't follow. That night, John hired a lawyer specializing in family law. The lawyer listened to his story with increasing concern. "Mr. Cooper, I'll be blunt. You have almost no case. You abandoned your daughter. Dr. Lavender has documentation proving she's been the sole provider and caregiver. Any judge would side with her. What if I fight anyway? Then you'll spend tens of thousands on legal fees, traumatize your daughter, and ultimately lose." John left the office feeling hollowed out. Every path forward was blocked. That afternoon, he violated the restraining order again. He stood in the parking lot exit of Memorial Hospital, forcing Benta's car to stop. "I hired a lawyer. She told me I have no rights, no way to force you to let me see Carnation," he said, moving closer but not threatening. "My only option is convincing you voluntarily. So I'm asking, please let me know my daughter." "No." "Why? Give me one reason." "I don't need a reason beyond protecting my child." A car honked behind them. Benta put her car in gear, ready to drive around him. John played his last card. "I love her," he said simply. "I don't even know her, but I love her. It's all I have to offer." Benta stared at him, and for the first time since they'd reunited, her mask completely fell away. Beneath the anger and the ice, he saw the woman he'd married looking at him now with pity. "Love isn't enough when trust is broken," she said quietly. "You didn't love me enough to trust me, so your love isn't worth what you think it is." She drove around him, leaving him standing in the parking lot as cars honked and drivers cursed. That night, John made a decision. He couldn't force his way into their lives. All he could do was prove, through consistent action over time, that he'd changed. So he set up a trust fund in Carnation's name, money she could access at 18, whether he was in her life or not. He wrote a letter explaining everything and gave it to his lawyer, with instructions to deliver it to Benta only if something happened to him. And then he did the hardest thing he'd ever done. He stayed away. No more stalking, no more following. He respected the restraining order completely, painfully, with every fiber of his being screaming to break it. But he didn't disappear entirely. Every week, he sent a single rose to Benta's office at the hospital. No note, no demands, just a rose. The first rose she threw in the trash. So did the second, third, and fourth. But the fifth one she put in a vase on her desk. Not because she'd forgiven him, just because the flower was beautiful. And sometimes, when her shift ended, she'd glance at the oak tree across from Carnation's school where John used to stand. He wasn't there anymore. The spot was empty, exactly as she'd demanded. She told herself she was relieved. But late at night, when Carnation was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Benta would look at the rose on her desk and wonder if some broken things deserved a chance to heal. Chapter 6. The Daughter's Eyes. Carnation was too smart for her own good. Benta had known this since her daughter was 3 and started asking questions that most children wouldn't think of for years. It was John's analytical mind, combined with Benta's stubborn refusal to accept simple answers, a dangerous combination wrapped in a 7-year-old package. Which was why, when Carnation's teacher, Mrs. Holloway, called requesting a parent conference, Benta's stomach dropped. "Is she in trouble?" Benta asked, squeezing the phone between her shoulder and ear while reviewing patient charts. "Not exactly, but we need to discuss a recent assignment." Mrs. Holloway's tone was careful. "Can you come by after school today?" 3 hours later, Benta sat in a child-sized chair across from Mrs. Holloway's desk, feeling like she was the one in trouble. The teacher slid a piece of paper across the desk, an essay titled "The Mystery of My Missing Father," written in Carnation's neat handwriting. Benta's blood ran cold as she read, "Everyone in my class has a father except me. Some fathers live with them, some live far away, but everyone knows who their father is, except me. My mama says my father wasn't strong enough to stay, but I don't think that's the whole truth. Adults always give half-truths when they think kids can't handle real answers. I've been noticing things. There was a man who used to watch us outside my school. He stopped coming after Mama yelled at him, but I remember his face. He had eyes like mine, the exact same color, like pennies in the sun. Nobody else has eyes like mine except him. I asked Mama why we have 2 last names, and she said one from each parent, Cooper Lavender. So my father's name is probably Cooper. I googled Cooper with our city and found lots of people, but one had eyes like mine in his photo. John Cooper. He looks sad in pictures. I think the man watching us was my father. I think Mama is protecting me from something, but I don't know what. Maybe he did something bad. Maybe he hurt her. But if he's sorry now, shouldn't that matter? Mama always tells me everyone deserves a chance to apologize and change. I want to know who my father is. I want to know if he thinks about me. I want to know if I got my eyes from him or if it's just a coincidence. I want to know why he left and if he misses me. Mrs. Holloway says this is an exploratory narrative assignment where we practice asking questions. My question is, does knowing the truth always make things better? Or are some truths better left alone? Benta's hands trembled as she set down the paper. Her brilliant, observant daughter had pieced together the mystery Benta had tried so hard to hide. "She's very bright," Mrs. Holloway said gently, "and clearly processing some complex emotions. I thought you should know before she starts researching further on her own." "Thank you," Benta's voice came out hollow. I'll talk to her." That afternoon, after picking Carnation up from school, Benta suggested they get ice cream, their usual ritual for difficult conversations. Carnation ordered chocolate with sprinkles and waited patiently while Benta struggled to find words. "Your teacher showed me your essay," Benta finally said. Carnation licked her cone thoughtfully. "Are you mad?" "No, What was she?" Angry that John's appearance had disrupted their peace. Said that Carnation was asking questions Benta wasn't ready to answer. Terrified that she was losing control of the narrative she'd carefully built. "I'm concerned. That's a lot of detective work you did. I learned from watching you with patience. You always say observation is the first step to diagnosis." Carnation's smile was proud. "Was I right? Is that man my father?" There was no point lying now. Carnation would just research more, ask more questions, eventually find answers on her own that might be worse than the truth. "Yes," Benta admitted. "That man was John Cooper, your biological father." Carnation absorbed this with surprising calm. "Why did you tell me he left?" "Because he did leave, just not the way you're thinking." Benta set down her own untouched ice cream. "We need to have a very grown-up conversation, Flower. Are you ready for that?" "I'm always ready for truth, Mama. You taught me that." So Benta told her. An age-appropriate version, carefully edited to avoid adult concepts Carnation didn't need yet. She explained the divorce, the misunderstanding, the decision to raise Carnation alone. She left out the cruelty, the betrayal, the depth of pain. Children didn't need to carry their parents' wounds, so he didn't know about me. Carnation's face scrunched in concentration. "You were going to tell him, but then you got divorced, so you didn't." "That's right. But why didn't you tell him after I was born?" "Don't fathers have a right to know they have children?" There it was. The question Benta had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. It's complicated, baby. Your father had just hurt me very badly. I didn't think he deserved to know about you. But what about what I deserved? Carnation's voice was small but pointed. Didn't I deserve to know my father? The words hit like a physical blow. In all her justifications, all her reasons for keeping John away, Benta had convinced herself she was protecting Carnation. But her daughter was right. She'd made a unilateral decision that affected Carnation's entire life. You're right, Benta said quietly. I made that choice for you when maybe I shouldn't have. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment, from a father who might let you down the way he let me down. What if he wouldn't have let me down? What if he's changed? Carnation leaned forward. People can change, right? You tell your patients that all the time, that hearts can heal, that people can recover from damage. Physical hearts are different from emotional ones, Flower, but the principle is the same. Carnation's intelligence shone through her young face. Broken things can be fixed if you give them the right treatment and time. Benta wanted to argue, wanted to explain that some breaks were too severe, some damage too extensive. But looking at her daughter's hopeful face, she couldn't crush that optimism. Carnation still believed in second chances because she'd never been betrayed deeply enough to lose that faith. What do you want, Carnation? Really want? I want to meet him. The answer came without hesitation. Just once. Just to see if my eyes really came from him and if he's as sad as he looked. He was watching us because he found out about you recently. Before that, he didn't know you existed. So he wants to know me too. Very much. Maybe too much. Benta sighed. He's been overeager, following us. That's why I had to make him stop. He was following us because he wanted to see me. Carnation's face lit up in a way that made Benta's heart ache. That means he cares. Or it means he feels guilty. Guilt is just love that feels bad about itself, Carnation said, with the casual wisdom of childhood. If he didn't love me, he wouldn't feel guilty, right? Benta had no answer for that. Her daughter had somehow articulated in one sentence what Benta had been trying to deny for weeks, that John's desperation came from a genuine place. Even if his methods were wrong, I'm scared, Benta admitted. Scared he'll disappoint you. Scared he'll decide being a father is too hard and leave again. Scared you'll get hurt the way I did. But what if he doesn't? Carnation reached across the table and took her mother's hand, with a maturity far beyond her years. What if he's really sorry and really changed? Don't I deserve to find out? What if he hasn't changed? What if letting him into our lives brings nothing but pain? Then we'll deal with it together, like we deal with everything. Carnation squeezed her hand. You've protected me my whole life, Mama. You're the best mother in the universe. But maybe it's time to let me have a father, too. Even if he's not perfect. Tears slid down Benta's face, despite her best efforts to hold them back. Her daughter was braver than she was, more willing to risk hurt for the possibility of something good. When had their roles reversed like this? I need time to think about it, Benta said finally. This isn't a decision I can make quickly. There are legal things to consider, boundaries to set, rules to establish. I won't just let a stranger into our lives without protection. He's not a stranger. He's my father. Biology doesn't automatically make him safe, Carnation, but curiosity makes me want to try. Carnation tilted her head. Do you still love him, Mama? The question caught Benta completely off guard. What? No, of course not. Then why do you still get so mad when you talk about him? My teacher says we only get really angry at people we once really loved. Out of the mouths of babes. Carnation had identified the central truth Benta had been avoiding, that her fury toward John was proportional to how deeply she'd once loved him. Indifference would have been healthier. Rage meant the wound was still open. I used to love him very much, Benta admitted. But that love died when he chose not to trust me. Can dead things come back to life? Not in real life, Flower. What about in metaphors? You use metaphors all the time. Carnation grinned. You say hearts that stop can be restarted. Maybe love that dies can be restarted too. I don't think that's how it works. Have you tried? No, she hadn't. She'd built walls and cultivated anger and convinced herself that protection was better than vulnerability. But Carnation was asking her to reconsider, to at least explore the possibility that forgiveness might be healthier than perpetual rage. I'll think about it, Benta said, about letting him meet you under strict supervision. But I'm not promising anything about me and him. That part is dead and buried, Flower. Even if I let him be your father, he'll never be my husband again. That's okay. One parent is better than none. Carnation's smile was pure sunshine. "Thank you, Mama, for considering it. For being brave enough to maybe give him a chance." "You're the brave one," Benta corrected. "I'm just the one who's terrified." They finished their ice cream in comfortable silence, but Benta's mind raced. Could she really do this? Let John Cooper back into their lives after everything he'd done? Risk Carnation's emotional well-being on the hope that he'd changed? The alternative was watching her daughter grow up with questions that would eventually turn to resentment. Wondering if her mother had kept her from a father who might have loved her. That was its own kind of damage, just slower and more insidious. That night, after Carnation went to bed, Benta found herself staring at the most recent rose John had sent. She'd been throwing them away again after that brief moment of weakness. But her secretary had rescued this one from the trash and put it on her desk anyway. "He's persistent. I'll give him that," her secretary had said. "Romantic too. Most men give up after the first rejection. But John wasn't giving up. He was respecting her boundaries while still making his presence known. Still hoping. Still waiting. That took a different kind of strength than the stalking had shown. Benta pulled out her phone and stared at the blocked contact she'd labeled simply him. Her finger hovered over the unblock button. One tap and she could send him a message. Start a conversation that might lead to supervised visits. Give Carnation what she wanted, but what did Benta want? That was the question she'd been avoiding. Did she want John back in her life for Carnation's sake? Or was there a part of her, buried deep beneath the anger and pain, that wanted him back for her own sake too? The thought terrified her more than anything else. She put the phone down without unblocking him. Tomorrow, maybe, or next week, or never. The decision felt too big, too permanent, too fraught with possibilities both beautiful and devastating. In his penthouse across town, John stared at his phone, willing it to ring, willing Benta to reach out, to give him even the smallest opening. He'd kept his promise. No stalking, no violations, no desperation. Just weekly roses and infinite patience. It was killing him slowly. But if patience was what Benta needed, he'd give her that. He'd give her anything, if it meant even the slightest possibility of knowing his daughter. He pulled out the photo he'd saved from Carnation's school website. Her gap-toothed smile stared back at him, full of life and joy that existed entirely separate from him. She didn't need him. She had Benta, and Benta was clearly an excellent mother. But maybe, just maybe, Carnation wanted him. And maybe that was enough of a reason to keep hoping. His phone stayed silent that night, and the next night, and the night after that. But 2 weeks later, just when John had started to lose the last shreds of hope, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Not about us. About Carnation. She wants to meet you. I have conditions." John stared at those words until they blurred with tears. His hands shook as he typed back, "Anything. Any conditions you want." "Thank you." The response came quickly. "Don't thank me yet. This isn't forgiveness. This is me doing what's best for my daughter." Remember that. He would. He'd remember every boundary, respect every rule, accept every limitation. Because Benta was giving him something he'd thought was lost forever. A chance. Just a chance. But chances were all anyone ever needed to begin rebuilding what they'd destroyed. Chapter 7. The Breaking Point. The coffee shop Benta chose was deliberately neutral, a chain location halfway between her apartment and John's side of town. Public enough that nothing inappropriate could happen, private enough for a conversation that would inevitably get emotional. John arrived 20 minutes early and ordered a coffee he couldn't drink. His hands shook so badly the liquid sloshed over the rim, burning his fingers. He welcomed the pain. It was real, immediate, better than the anticipation crushing his chest. Benta walked in exactly on time, her posture military straight, face set in the professional mask he'd seen in her office. She sat across from him without preamble, placing a folder on the table between them. "These are my conditions," she said without greeting. "Read them, sign them. If you agree, we proceed. If you don't, we walk away and this conversation never happened." John opened the folder. Inside was a typed list. "All visits with Carnation will be supervised by me for a minimum of 6 months. 2. Visits will occur once weekly in public locations. For no more than 2 hours, Coon. You will not attempt to contact Carnation outside of approved visit times. T. You will not speak negatively about me to Carnation, nor attempt to undermine my parenting. You will undergo a background check and provide medical records showing you're mentally and physically capable of interacting with a child. 6. You will attend co-parenting counseling sessions with me, facilitated by a professional therapist. At any time, if I determine your presence is harmful to Carnation's well-being, these visits will cease. Immediately, you will not pursue legal action regarding custody or visitation rights. 9. You will not give Carnation gifts exceeding reasonable value without my explicit approval. 10. You will respect that I am her parent and you are currently a stranger earning the privilege of knowing her. Below the list, a signature line. John pulled out his pen without hesitation. You don't want to think about it? Benta asked, surprise flickering across her carefully neutral expression. I'd agree to worse terms if it meant seeing her. He signed with a hand that was steadier now that he had a tangible goal. When can I meet her? Not so fast. Benta took the signed document, slipped it back into the folder. There's something else, something you need to understand before we do this. Anything. Carnation asked to meet you. She's curious, and she's at an age where that curiosity will only grow if I deny it. But that doesn't mean she needs you, John. She has a full life, friends, activities, a mother who would die for her. You're not filling a void because there is no void. You're an addition, not a necessity. Remember that. The words stung, but they were fair. I understand. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been acting like a man who lost his family. But we were never your family, John. I was a wife you discarded, and Carnation is a child who existed just fine without you. Her voice remained clinical, but her eyes betrayed deeper emotion. Don't come into her life thinking you're rescuing her or completing her. She's already complete. I know. And he did, painfully. I'm not trying to fill holes in her life. I'm trying to fill the hole in mine. At least you're honest about that. Benta leaned back. Here's what happens next. You get your background check done within the week. Once it clears, you'll meet with Dr. Patricia Reeves, the family therapist I've selected. She'll do an evaluation, determine if you're stable enough for this arrangement. And if she says I'm not, then this conversation ends here. No room for negotiation in her tone. I won't risk Carnation's psychological well-being to assuage your guilt. It's not just guilt. The words came out raw, honest in a way John hadn't been with anyone in years. Benta, when I saw her, when I looked into those eyes that are my eyes, something broke open in me. Or maybe something that was already broken, finally started to feel real pain instead of numbness. I've been walking around dead for 8 years. She brought me back to life. That's a lot of pressure to put on a 7-year-old child. I know. I'll never tell her that. I'll never make her responsible for fixing me. He met Benta's gaze directly. But I need you to understand that this isn't about my ego, or my guilt, or my need to feel like a good person. This is about a daughter I didn't know I could love until I saw her. And now I can't imagine not knowing her. Benta's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something that might have been understanding, or pity. John couldn't tell which and wasn't sure it mattered. The first meeting will be at a park, she said. All business again. Neutral territory. You'll have 1 hour? I'll be present the entire time. If Carnation seems uncomfortable or asks to leave, we leave immediately. Understood? And then understood. And John? She gathered her folder, prepared to leave. Don't break her heart. Because if you do, there's no coming back from that. Not with me and not with her. She may be curious now, but children learn quickly when adults can't be trusted. If you're not ready to be consistent, reliable, and present, tell me now, before we take this step. I'm ready. He'd never been more certain of anything. I'll do whatever it takes to be the father she deserves. She deserves someone who shows up, Benta said quietly. Not someone who promises the moon and delivers disappointment. Can you be that person? Or could he? John searched himself honestly. He'd failed Benta catastrophically, had let his mother manipulate him, had chosen comfort over truth, had thrown away something precious because it required work to defend. But that man felt like a stranger now. 8 years of regret had burned away everything weak and left only the essential truth. He wanted to be better, needed to be better, for Carnation, if not for himself. I can be that person, he said. I will be. Benta studied him for a long moment, looking for cracks in his certainty. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she nodded once, sharply. Background check by Friday. Dr. Reeves will contact you for an appointment. If everything clears, we'll schedule the first meeting for 2 weeks from Saturday. Bring nothing except yourself. No gifts, no grand gestures. Just show up. She left without another word, leaving John sitting alone with cold coffee and a future that suddenly held possibility instead of just regret. He spent the next week in a whirlwind of preparation. Background checks submitted immediately. Consultation scheduled with Dr. Reeves. He even cleaned out his penthouse, making space for the possibility that someday, maybe, Carnation might visit. Child-proofing a space that had never held children felt surreal and hopeful in equal measure. But 3 days before his appointment with Dr. Reeves, John woke up with chest pain that took his breath away. Not the usual stress-related tightness he'd been ignoring for months. This was sharp, radiating, accompanied by nausea that sent him to the bathroom floor. He managed to call for an ambulance before the world went grey. When he woke in the emergency room, a cardiologist was standing over him with a grim expression. Not Benter, some other doctor whose name John didn't catch through the haze of pain medication. "You're lucky you called when you did," the doctor said. "Significant blockage in your left anterior descending artery. We're going to need to schedule an angioplasty, possibly stenting, depending on what we find. You'll be admitted overnight for monitoring. I have an appointment Friday. You'll be here Friday. This is serious, Mr. Cooper. Your heart is trying to tell you something. I suggest you listen." The irony wasn't lost on John. He'd spent 8 years nursing a broken heart metaphorically, and now the literal organ was failing too, as if his body had finally decided to match his emotional state. He texted Benter from his hospital bed. "In Memorial Hospital. Heart problems. May need to postpone meeting with Dr. Reeves. I'm sorry." The response came an hour later. "What happened?" "Blockage. They're doing procedure tomorrow." "I'm okay." A lie. He felt like death warmed over. "What room?" He told her, not expecting anything, but 20 minutes later, Benter appeared in his doorway, still in her white coat. She must have been working in the same hospital. The universe had a sick sense of humor. "You look terrible," she said without preamble. "You look beautiful." The words came out before he could stop them, honest and unfiltered through the pain medication fog. Benter's expression didn't soften, but she stepped into the room, checking his monitors with professional efficiency. "Your vitals are stable." "Who's your attending?" "Dr. Morrison, I think." "Everything's kind of blurry." She pulled out her phone, made a call. "David, it's Benter Lavender." "You have a patient, John Cooper." "Yes, that one." "What's the plan?" She listened, nodded, frowned. "And the prognosis?" "Right, okay. Keep me updated." She hung up, looked at John with something that might have been concern beneath the professional detachment. "You have significant coronary artery disease. Years of stress, poor self-care, and genetic predisposition. You're 40 years old, and your heart looks like it belongs to someone 20 years older. Will I be okay for the meeting with Carnation?" "Is that seriously your first question?" But there was something almost like respect in her voice. "You're not thinking about yourself at all, are you?" There's nothing left to think about except her. John tried to sit up, but the chest pain made him gasp. Benter was at his side instantly, adjusting his position, checking his IV. "Stop moving. You just had a cardiac event." Her hands were gentle despite her sharp tone. "And to answer your question, if the angioplasty goes well, you'll be cleared for light activity in a week or 2. Meeting with Carnation would probably be fine. But you need to take this seriously, John. Stress is literally killing you." "I know what's killing me." He looked at her directly. "It's guilt. It's regret. It's 8 years of knowing I destroyed the only real thing I ever had." "Stop!" Benter stepped back, arms crossed defensively. "Don't do this. Don't use your medical crisis to manipulate emotions." "I'm not. I'm just telling you the truth." His voice was weak but steady. "My heart started failing the day I failed you. It's taken this long for my body to catch up to what my soul already knew. That's not how cardiology works, but it's how the heart works." He managed a weak smile. "You're the expert on pumps and valves. I'm the expert on how it feels when the thing keeping you alive decides it's tired of the job." Benter stared at him, and for the first time since their reunion, John saw her mask completely crack. Tears welled in her eyes, though she blinked them back furiously. "You don't get to do this," she whispered. "You don't get to be sick and vulnerable and make me feel things I've spent 8 years trying to kill." "I'm not trying to make you feel anything. I'm just—" He gestured helplessly at the monitors, the IV, the hospital room that had become an unwanted confessional. I'm just a man whose heart is broken in more ways than one, talking to the woman who could fix both if she wanted to. I can't fix what you did to us. I know. But maybe you could fix this. He pointed to his chest, where his literal heart struggled to keep rhythm. Be my cardiologist, Benta. You're the best. Everyone says so. If anyone can keep this broken thing beating long enough for me to meet my daughter, it's you. That's not appropriate. Since when do you care about appropriate? You became a doctor while raising a child alone. You built a career while carrying the weight of everything I put on you. You're the strongest person I know, and I'm asking, no, I'm begging, for you to save my life. Not for me. For Carnation. The emotional blackmail was shameless, and John knew it. But desperation had long since burned away his pride. Benta closed her eyes, took a deep breath, made some internal calculation that John couldn't see. When she opened them again, the professional mask was back in place. Fine, I'll take your case. But only because you're right. I am the best, and I won't let you die before Carnation gets the chance to know you properly. She pulled out her phone, started making notes. Dr. Morrison will handle the angioplasty tomorrow, but I'll oversee your recovery and long-term treatment plan. You'll follow every single instruction I give. You'll change your lifestyle completely, and you'll stop using your health as an emotional weapon. I wasn't... Yes, you were. Her look could have cut steel. But it worked, so congratulations. You now have the best cardiologist in the state personally invested in keeping you alive. Try not to waste the opportunity by being an idiot. She turned to leave, but John's voice stopped her. Benta? Thank you. For everything. For letting me try with Carnation. For taking my case. For not hating me quite enough to let me die. She paused at the door, her back to him. I don't hate you, John, that's the problem. Hate would be easier. Hate would be clean. What I feel for you is so much more complicated than that. Then she was gone, leaving John alone with monitors and medication. And the overwhelming realization that he'd just put his literal heart in the hands of the woman whose metaphorical heart he'd shattered. The universe's sense of irony was definitely working overtime. 2 days later, John woke from the angioplasty procedure to find Benta standing at the foot of his bed, reading his chart. She looked exhausted, like she'd been there for hours. The procedure went well, she said without looking up. 2 stents. You should make a full recovery if you follow orders, which means no stress, proper diet, regular exercise, and medication compliance. Will I be cleared for the meeting? In 2 weeks, yes. But John, she finally met his eyes. You need to understand something. This health crisis, it's a warning. Your body is telling you it can't sustain the life you've been living. You need to change everything, not just for Carnation, but for yourself. I will. Whatever it takes. Good. She made another note on the chart. Because she needs a father who will be around for more than just a few supervised visits. If you're going to do this, you need to do it right. Which means living long enough to matter. She left then, professional and distant. But on his bedside table, John found a single flower, a carnation, pink and perfect. No note, but he didn't need one. It was her way of saying, don't waste this second chance. He wouldn't. He'd survive this. He'd be the father Carnation deserved. And maybe, just maybe, if he proved himself worthy enough for long enough, Benta might eventually trust him with more than just his own broken heart. Chapter 8. Fragments of Truth. The Saturday morning sun felt too bright for the weight in John's chest. Not physical pain. The stents had done their job. This was pure terror wrapped in anticipation. He was a stranger with matching DNA, hoping a 7-year-old would give him a chance he didn't deserve. Riverside Park sprawled green and ordinary. John stood by the designated bench, checking his watch every 30 seconds. 9:45. He'd arrived at 9. A car pulled into the lot. Through the windshield he could see them. Benta saying something, Carnation nodding, then turning to look directly at him. Even from this distance, those copper eyes found him with unnerving accuracy. They walked over slowly. Carnation held her mother's hand, but her gaze never left John's face, studying him with scientific intensity. When they stopped, the silence stretched like glass about to shatter. Hello, you must be Carnation, and you must be John Cooper, my biological father. Carnation, Benta warned softly. What? That's what you called him? She looked up at her mother, then back at John. Am I supposed to pretend we're something we're not? John laughed, a real laugh, the first in years that felt genuine. No pretending. You're absolutely right. That's exactly what I am. Stranger, man who needs to earn the right to know you. Something shifted in Carnation's expression. Not trust, but curiosity warming into possibility. Okay, so how do you plan to earn it? It's a fair question, John said, kneeling to her eye level. Honestly, I don't know yet. Maybe we figure it out together. You can ask me anything. Test me. See if I'm worth your time. Carnation tilted her head, a gesture so achingly familiar John's throat tightened. He'd done that exact movement his entire life. Do you have any other kids? No, you're my only child. Have you been married to anyone else? No, and I'm not married now. Why did you believe those fake pictures instead of trusting my mom? The directness stole his breath. Benta made a small sound of protest, but Carnation pressed on. If you loved her, why didn't you believe her? This was the test. Could he be honest with a child about adult failures? Because I was weak, scared. I let someone I trusted tell me lies that were easier than trusting something that required work. That's stupid. Yes, it was incredibly stupid. So, why should I trust you? You shouldn't. Not yet. John felt Benta's surprise. Trust is earned through consistent action over time. So I'm here to start earning it, however long that takes. Carnation studied him. Do you ever tilt your head when you're thinking really hard? The question caught him off guard. Yes, all the time. Why? Because I do that too. I always wondered where I got it from. A small smile. I got it from you. The simple statement hit like a physical blow. This child carried pieces of him in her gestures. I'm sorry, he said, voice breaking. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. It's okay. Mama says people make big mistakes, but mistakes can be learned from if the person really wants to change. I want to change. I have changed. I'll prove it to you. Okay, can we go play on the swings now? This talking is making me nervous. They walked to the playground, John keeping respectful distance as Carnation claimed a swing. Benta stood guard nearby. John hung back, content to observe his daughter pumping her legs, flying higher with each arc. She's amazing, he said softly to Benta. I know. No warmth in Benta's voice, but no ice either. She's too smart for her own good. She got that from you. And the stubbornness from you. A pause. She's been researching you, looking up your name online. What did she find? Enough to build a picture. Benta's gaze never left Carnation. She asked me if you were a good person. I said you made terrible choices, but maybe you were trying to be better. Don't make me a liar, John. I won't. After an hour, Carnation returned. I'm thirsty. John bought apple juice from the snack cart. They sat on the bench together, Carnation in the middle, parents on either side like bookends. Can I ask you something else? Carnation sipped thoughtfully. Always. Do you think about me when we're not together? The question was so vulnerable, so clearly the heart of what she really wanted to know. Every minute of every day. Whether you're happy, what makes you laugh, what scares you. I think about all the moments I missed and all the ones I hope I'll get to see. Mama cries sometimes at night. She thinks I'm asleep, but I hear her. Is she crying about you? Benta stiffened. Carnation, that's private. If she's still crying about you after all this time, that means she still cares. Maybe there's hope for fixing what got broken? Some things can't be fixed, Flower, Benta said gently, but you fix broken hearts for a living. If you can fix other people's hearts, why can't you fix your own? Neither adult had an answer. John watched Benta struggle with emotions she didn't want to show. Time's up, Benta announced, standing abruptly. We need to get home. Next Saturday, same time, same place? John asked. We'll see. Same time, same place, John said firmly to Carnation. I promise. I'll be here. She surprised him by taking his hand briefly. You're not as scary as I thought you'd be. You're braver than I could ever be. As they drove away, Carnation looked back twice, waving. The drive home was quiet. Once inside, Carnation disappeared into her room, but 10 minutes later, a gasp sent Benta running. She found her daughter on the floor, a letter clutched in shaking hands. Benta's hidden box lay open beside her, the one containing John's letter, the ultrasound, the wedding photo. What are you doing going through my things? I was looking for medical school photos for a project. Carnation looked up. Mama, what is this? She held up John's letter, the one explaining everything. That's private. It's about me. Carnation started reading aloud. devouring John's confession about his mother's manipulation, the years of searching, discovering Carnation existed. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that discovering you exist is the best thing that ever happened to me. That's all your mother. She's the hero of this story. Tears streamed down Carnation's face. He really loves us. This isn't just guilt. He's been trying to find us for years. Carnation. Why didn't you tell me? You let me think he abandoned us. Anger flashed. He made a mistake, but he's sorry. And you kept me from knowing that because you're too hurt to forgive him. I was protecting you. From what? From having a father who wants to know me. Carnation's voice cracked. You tell your patients that hearts can heal. Why doesn't that apply to us? Benta had no answer. Her daughter had identified the central hypocrisy. She believed in second chances for everyone, except the person who'd hurt her most. He hurt me, Flower. Badly. I know, but people can change. You taught me that? Carnation wiped her face. Don't I deserve a chance to have a father? Don't we all deserve a chance to be a family? We are a family, you and me, but what if it could be more? Carnation's question was devastating. What if broken could become whole again? Benta's phone buzzed. A text from John. Thank you for today. It meant everything. I'll be there next Saturday. I promise. She showed it to Carnation, who smiled through tears. See, he keeps his promises now. One promise doesn't erase years of broken ones. No, but it's a start. Carnation took her mother's hand. Give him a chance, Mama, a real one. Because I think you're still in love with him, and that's why you're so scared. The words hit like a cardiac arrest. Was Carnation right? I need time to think about this, Benta managed. Okay, but don't take too long. Life's too short to waste on being angry when you could be happy instead. Benta pulled her daughter into a hug. When did you get so smart? I learned from watching you fight for other people's hearts. Now I'm fighting for yours. That night, Benta reread John's letter, then the old wedding photo. That girl looked so happy, so naively confident that love would conquer everything. That girl was dead. But maybe the woman who remained could learn to risk her heart one more time. Her phone sat on the table, John's message still on screen. Her thumb hovered over the reply button. She didn't respond, but she didn't delete the message either, and that was something. A crack in the armor. Across town, John stared at his phone, hoping for a response that didn't come. But he'd learned patience. He'd show up next Saturday, and every Saturday after, until Benta either opened her heart or closed it permanently. Because Carnation was worth the wait. And somewhere, buried beneath 8 years of rage and pain, the woman he'd loved was worth fighting for, too. Chapter 9. The Vigil. The second visit went better, and the third. By the fourth Saturday, Carnation ran to John the moment she saw him, chattering about her week. Benta watched from her protective distance, walls still high, but showing more cracks. John learned his daughter through these careful encounters. She loved dinosaurs but hated spiders, could recite the periodic table but struggled with spelling, wanted to be a veterinarian because animals don't lie or hurt each other on purpose like humans do. That last one hurt. Tell me about when you and Mama first met. Carnation requested during their fifth visit, swinging between them as they walked. Benta had finally agreed to walk together instead of hovering, progress, however small. We met in medical school, Benta answered before John could. Lab partners. Love at first sight? More like irritation at first sight, John admitted. Your mother was too smart and made me look bad. I was not. You were. He smiled at the memory. You corrected the professor on the third day. I thought you were showing off. I was right, though. You were always right. That's what irritated me. But somewhere between anatomy and graduation, irritation became respect, became friendship, became love. When did you know you wanted to marry her? John glanced at Benta, saw the walls come back up. But he answered honestly. The first time I saw her with a patient, there was this elderly man terrified of his heart surgery. Your mother sat with him for an hour after her shift ended, just talking. She had all this knowledge and skill, but what made her special was how much she cared. That's still true, Carnation said proudly. She's still my hero, even if I'm not hers anymore. Benta looked away, but not before John saw tears forming. The visits continued. 6 weeks, 7, 8, John showed up early every time, never missed once. He learned Carnation's quirks and fears and dreams. learned how to make her laugh with terrible dad jokes, learned that she was brave and brilliant and better than he deserved. And slowly he learned Benta again too, how she still took her coffee black with too much sugar, how she rubbed her left temple when stressed. All the small intimacies came flooding back, and with them the devastating realization that he'd never stopped loving her. Mama's birthday is next week, Carnation mentioned during their 9th visit. I'm making her a card, but I'm not good at drawing. No gifts, Benta interrupted sharply. We agreed, but that night John drew anyway. Not a card, just a picture. Benta and Carnation together, surrounded by anatomically correct hearts, with chambers and valves labeled. He gave it to Carnation the following Saturday, before Benta arrived. For your mother. From both of us. If you want to include it with your card, you can. Carnation studied it. The left ventricle is perfect. That's the chamber that pumps blood to the whole body, right? Right, the strongest part of the heart. Like your mother. Thank you. She'll pretend not to like it, but she will. When Benta arrived, John noticed her eyes were red. Exhaustion, not crying. She'd pulled a double shift. Are you okay? Fine, just tired. Long week. Maybe we should reschedule. No! Carnation and John said simultaneously. Carnation amended. It's okay, Mama. You can rest on the bench. You don't have to supervise every second. John's proven he's safe. The use of his first name sent warmth through John's chest. I trust him, Carnation said simply. Don't you? It was a test. Benta looked at John, really looked at him, seeing past anger to the man who'd shown up consistently for 9 weeks. Fine, she said quietly. 1 hour. Stay where I can see you. They played while Benta watched from the bench. Carnation talked about her science project on heart transplants. I'm going to talk about how broken hearts can get replaced with healthy ones. But I'm also going to talk about how the body sometimes rejects the new heart, because it doesn't recognize it as belonging. The metaphor wasn't lost on John. What happens when the body rejects the heart? Doctors give medicine to help the body accept what's trying to save it. They fight the rejection until the body realizes the new heart isn't an enemy. She looked at him significantly. Sometimes you have to force systems to work together even when they don't want to. That's very wise. Before he could say more, a sound from the bench made them turn. Benta had slumped over, her head in her hands. Mama! Carnation ran over. Mama, what's wrong? Just dizzy. I'm okay. But she wasn't. Pale skin, shallow breathing, trembling hands. When did you last eat? John asked. This morning. Maybe yesterday. She tried to stand and nearly fell. John caught her, and for the first time in 8 years, Benta let him touch her without pulling away. You need food and rest. Now. John got orange juice and a protein bar, while Carnation fussed maternally. Benta drank and ate, color returning. Thank you, she said after finishing. Both of you. We're a team, Carnation announced. Mama, John, and me. Carnation, I know you're not together, but that doesn't mean we're not a team. The moment stretched, loaded with possibilities. I should get you home, John said. You need rest. I'll drive you both. He expected an argument. Got silence instead. Benta was too exhausted to fight. The drive was quiet. When they arrived, John helped Benta to the door. Let him help Mama, Carnation pleaded. Just this once. John walked them inside. The apartment was small but warmly decorated, photos everywhere of Carnation growing up. All the moments he'd missed. He got Benta settled on the couch, while Carnation ran for pillows and blankets. Together they created a nest around her. I'm okay, really. Just overdid it this week. You overdo it every week, Carnation accused. You need help. Partner help. She looked meaningfully between them. Carnation. 2 parents are better than 1. Especially when one parent forgets to eat and passes out in parks. I didn't pass out. You almost did, and John caught you, just like partners are supposed to do. Her logic was airtight. Maybe instead of pretending we're not a family, we could just be a family. John's heart stopped. The suggestion hung in the air, impossible and tempting. It's not that simple, Flower, Benta said gently. Why not? You trust him with me now. You still love him, even though you pretend you don't. Carnation's bluntness was devastating. Everyone can see it except you. Carnation, that's enough. But Carnation pressed on, tears forming. I just want us to be happy. All of us, together. Is that so wrong? John knelt beside her. It's not wrong at all, but your mother and I have a lot of history to work through. But it can be fixed with time and effort, right? That's what you tell patients, Mama. Hearts aren't relationships. They're exactly the same. Carnation was crying now. You fixed John's broken heart with surgery. Why can't you fix your broken heart with him? The room fell silent except for Carnation's sobs. Benta pulled her close. I should go, John said quietly. No! Carnation pulled away. Please don't go. Can we just sit here together? Like a normal family? Just for a little while? How could he say no? So they sat. Carnation fell asleep within minutes. Benta's eyes drifted closed soon after. John sat vigil, studying Benta's sleeping face. She was still beautiful. Still everything he'd ever wanted and thrown away. An hour passed. 2. Benta stirred, opened her eyes. You stayed, she whispered. She asked me to. You could have left. I couldn't. Not when she looked at me like leaving would break her heart. He paused. I've broken enough hearts in this family. Benta's eyes glistened. John, I love you. The words escaped before he could stop them. I never stopped. I know I don't have the right to say that, but I need you to know it's true. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed to say it once, because it's the truest thing I know. Tears slid down Benta's cheeks. You can't just say things like that. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that when I look at you, I see the only woman I've ever loved. Whether you forgive me or not, that won't change. She opened her mouth to respond, but movement outside caught John's attention. A man staggering past, then collapsing on the sidewalk. Someone just went down outside, John said, already moving. Call 911. Benta was up instantly. She grabbed her phone while John ran for the door. But the stress, the sudden movement, and his still healing heart proved dangerous. 3 steps from the door, John's chest exploded in pain. The world tilted, his vision grayed. He heard Benta scream his name, felt his knees hit the floor, and then nothing but Carnation crying, Daddy! As darkness claimed him, the word echoed in his fading consciousness, Daddy. It was worth dying for, that word, but he really hoped he wouldn't. Chapter 10. Carnation's Choice. John woke to monitors beeping, antiseptic smell, familiar hospital sounds. His chest ached, but differently, like something repaired rather than broken further. You're awake. Benta sat beside his bed in doctor mode, chart in hand, eyes red-rimmed. Welcome back. How long? 18 hours. Emergency stent for another blockage. You could have died on our living room floor. The memory flooded back. The man outside, his chest seizing, and Carnation's voice, Daddy. Where's Carnation? At school. I didn't want her sitting here all day worrying. Benta set down the chart. She was the one who called 911. She saved your life, John. She called me Daddy. I know. You kept mumbling it during the procedure. I thought I was dying, and all I could think about was that I got to hear her say it once. You're an idiot, but there was no heat in it. You almost died trying to help someone else while your heart was failing. The man outside, fine, epileptic seizure. EMTs got there in time. You collapsed for nothing. Not nothing. I collapsed in front of my daughter and the woman I love. Stop talking like that. It doesn't change anything, doesn't it? Before she could answer, Carnation burst through the door. She stopped when she saw John awake, face cycling through relief, joy, and fury. You scared me. She ran to his bedside, tears falling. You just fell down and I thought, I'm okay, sweet girl. John reached for her hand. You're not okay. Your heart is broken and you keep pretending. Her tears came harder. Why do adults always lie about being broken? Because we don't want the people we love to worry. Well, I worried anyway. I worried so much, and I made Mama promise we could visit you, and she stopped. I called you Daddy. I heard. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard, but I wasn't supposed to. We were supposed to take it slow, and she dissolved into sobs. Carnation, look at me. He waited until her eyes met his. You can call me anything you want. Daddy is more than I deserve, but more than I've ever wanted anything. But what if you leave again? What if your heart breaks worse and you die and I called you Daddy for nothing? Benta moved to Carnation's side, wrapped an arm around her. That's not going to happen. The doctors fixed his heart. You don't know that. People die all the time. Carnation looked between them. I can't lose him now. And I can't lose you because you work too hard. I can't lose anyone! The breakdown was complete. John and Benta looked at each other over their daughter's head, sharing complete understanding. They'd done this. Their broken relationship had transferred anxiety onto a child who should never have had to carry it. "I promise you," John spoke firmly, "I will do everything possible to stay alive and healthy. I'll take my medicine, follow orders, reduce stress. Because now I have the best reason in the world to live. You. And Mama?" The question hung there, loaded. Carnation looked up at Benta. "Do you love John, Mama? Really love him?" "Carnation, that's not fair." "It is. It's the most fair question ever." She pulled away, standing between them like a tiny judge. "I've been watching you. The way you look at each other. The way Mama kept that rose, even though she threw the others away. The way you almost cried, Mama, when he said he loved you. You were supposed to be asleep." "I was worried. I was listening." Carnation's voice rose. "I heard John say he loves you, and I saw your face, Mama. You wanted to say it, but were too scared." Benta stood frozen, exposed. John watched the war happening behind her eyes. Benta started, stopped. "It's complicated, Flower." "No, it's not." Carnation's certainty was absolute. "You either love someone or you don't. And if you love them, you fight for them. Hearts and relationships are different. They're exactly the same." Carnation stamped her foot. "I'm 7, and I know this." "Why don't you?" "Because I'm scared." The admission burst from Benta. "Terrified of trusting him again and having him hurt us. Terrified of opening my heart and finding out it was too damaged to heal. But what if it doesn't collapse?" Carnation took her hands. "What if it works? What if we could be happy? Don't you want that?" "Of course I want that." "Then why are you fighting it?" Benta looked at John, and for the first time since the divorce, he saw her completely vulnerable. "What if you change your mind?" she whispered. "What happens to Carnation then?" "Then she'll have learned that sometimes love means trying even when it's hard." John sat up despite the pain. "But that won't happen. I learned my lesson 8 years ago. I've spent 8 years in hell. I'm not going back." "Pretty words." "Not words. Proof. I've shown up every week, respected every boundary. Put Carnation first. I'll keep doing that forever." He held out his hand. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance to prove I'm not that man anymore." Carnation moved between them, took both their hands. "I'm asking too, Mama. Please, let's try being a real family." "What if we fail?" Benta's tears fell. "Then we'll have tried. That's better than wondering forever." Carnation squeezed both hands. "I forgive him, Mama. I forgive Daddy for not being there before. Because he's here now." The word Daddy broke something in John. He started crying, 8 years of pain finally finding release. "I don't deserve you," he managed. "Either of you?" "Probably not." Benta's voice was thick with tears. "But Carnation's right. You're here now. You've proven you can be consistent, reliable." She took a shaky breath. "And I'm tired, John. So tired of carrying anger." "We take it slow," Benta said finally. "No rushing. Just slow, careful steps." "I can do slow," John promised. "And if you hurt her again, if you hurt either of us, I will make your life hell." The steel returned. "Don't test me." "I won't." "Good." She wiped her face. "Now, your discharge papers. Strict cardiac rehab, no stress. And I'm personally overseeing your recovery." "I'd like that." "Someone has to keep you alive long enough to actually be a father." "And a partner?" "Let's start with co-parents and see where it goes." But something had shifted in Benta's eyes. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. Carnation, still holding both their hands, grinned through tears. "Can we go to the park together? All 3 of us?" "When your father is medically cleared, yes." Benta's use of father made John's heart stutter. "I'll rest," John promised. "I'll be the best patient you've ever had. You'll be the most annoying patient I've ever had. Because I know you, John Cooper. You'll push boundaries. At least you'll regret me for the right reasons this time." The joke was dark, but Benta laughed. Actually laughed. Carnation laughed too, and suddenly they were all laughing and crying, 3 broken people trying to figure out how to fit together. "I love you both," John said when the laughter faded. "You're my family, however that looks. I'll spend the rest of my life proving I deserve that." Carnation hugged him carefully. "You don't have to prove anything, Daddy. You just have to stay." "I'll stay. Forever, if you'll have me." Benta didn't say I love you back. Couldn't, not yet. But she moved closer, took John's free hand, and that was enough. They sat together in that hospital room, mother, father, daughter, and for the first time in 8 years, the pieces began remembering how to fit. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't healed, but it was a beginning. Mama always says the strongest bones are the ones that healed after breaking. Carnation